Hey everybody, Travis Tyler from the Customer Engagement Lab here. I've interviewed lots of small business owners and entrepreneurs on this show, but none of them are responsible for the branding and design for some of my very favorite establishments in Tampa Bay, Florida. My guest today is behind the design and branding for the following businesses. The Library, formerly the Peabody. I also have been to Big Storm Distillery, which is another one that she has helped design. I've also done Black Cattle and Paradico Coffee, which is actually where we met. So that was pretty cool to find out that not only did you do the design, but you came up with a freaking name for the place.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
And I've been going to that place all along, and I'm like, little did I know, Maureen Horan is the one that designed this. So Maureen, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here today.
Hi, Travis. Thanks for having me.
I want to conclude my intro with a description from one of our mutual friends and one of my running co-hosts of the show, Kat Lim. Here's what she had to say about you, Maureen. Maureen is an absolutely amazing branding person. When she talks about brands, she's not just thinking about fonts and colors. She thinks about who the people are that actually come to this business. What type of person are they? What will they be wearing? She's thinking of that level of detail. That's why she's so good. She thinks of the brand experience so holistically. When she creates a brand presentation for a client, she's including every single detail from the ground up. She's asking, how do I legitimize this organization? How can I make everyone instantly take this brand seriously? She's incredible. She's the best. So that's what Kat had to say. I was like, man, I was typing it out as she was writing it, and I just thought it would make you feel welcome.
Absolutely. She's one of my biggest fans, that's for sure. I mean, you saw when I met you, she screamed in the middle of Paradico. She makes me feel so important.
I've got an opening clip. It's a bit long. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but I want to take a look at it with you and get your reaction because I think it will tie in nicely to our topic of self-employed tips for your first year of full-time freelancing with clients.
Here's what you wish someone had told you before you went self-employed. You're going to work more hours than most people do in the 9 to 5. If you want to take a holiday, it's going to cost you twice because you've got to pay for the holiday and you've also got to turn work down. If you get sick and you can't work, you're basically fucked because no one's going to pay you a sick wage. You've got to do 100 other friggin' stupid things that you hate, as well as the work that you actually get paid to do. Like invoicing, like speaking to clients, like attracting new clients. And all of that stuff requires other skill sets that you quite frankly have no friggin' interest in whatsoever. Did I also mention it's stressful? But here's the thing, you put up with all of that crap because you never wanted to work for someone else. You had the dream of becoming your own boss. But if you actually ask the question, is the reality matching up to my dream?
He goes on and on. He's promoting his own stuff through this video, but I thought the first half of the video was really powerful. And when I watched it, I was like, ooh, I wonder how Maureen would want to answer this question. Is the dream of being self-employed, being a full-time freelancer, going out on your own, living up to the reality? Or is the reality living up to the dream, I should say? That would be my question for you.
I think so far, since I've only been doing this, I think about 9 months, I would say it is living up to the dream. There's a lot of work that goes in it. He's pretty right about all of those things. Because when you're not working, you're thinking about it. You're thinking about if you're going to have enough clients the following month, if you're going to make as much money, that for me at least, because I'm new at being self-employed, I have a lot to think about. But it is really rewarding every day to wake up and think, I'm doing this myself. I'm advocating for myself. You know, I'm not just a cog in a machine. Mm-hmm. I'm in charge. So being in control is pretty powerful and rewarding. So far, I would say it is living the dream. Just doing this, I'm super grateful for. So that in itself is a big deal to me.
I'm excited to hear more, and I'm really excited to have you on the episode, especially because you're still fairly new at being fully self-employed. Mm-hmm. I think I've had Zach, who is the owner of Coastal, come on the show. I've had lots of entrepreneurs who have been doing this for years and years and years. And I think it's really cool to have somebody who's like in their first year still. So they're like in the thick of it, because I think once you get into years like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yesterday I had Dex on the podcast. He was in year 14. I think sometimes you tend to forget what that first year was like. And so it can kind of be a cool time capsule. So I'm hoping this episode you'll look back on and be like, oh my gosh, I was a baby, or like I've learned so much since then.
I was thinking about that earlier. I was like, I'm kind of excited to be in year 3.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to
spot.
savor the moment, because it kind of feels, when you first start, when you have a new job or when you're super young and you have your first job and you have that enthusiasm and that excitement,
Yep.
and you're not bitter yet. And so I
Still
feel
in the
like
honeymoon phase.
Still in the honeymoon phase. I'm getting to relive that. So I'm trying to like soak it up.
Good. Well, let's dive into the first section of this episode, which is how and when to make the leap to being 100% self-employed. So you've worked at some pretty great marketing agencies, but just about a year ago, you started your own business, became self-employed, and like I said earlier, took the deep dive into full-time freelancing. Were you scared? How did you deal with that fear if you were?
I definitely was scared. So I had registered for an LLC actually in like 2015 or 16.
Oh, man.
So this has been on my mind for quite a while.
Okay.
But I had other opportunities come about and they seemed like great opportunities. So I was like, let me take these. I think I'm going to learn a lot. I think these will be great for me.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel like the time was right. Like I just knew myself. So I put it off, but during that time, I learned so much. So I'm really glad that I did end up waiting. But still, I was super scared. The scariest part is making the decision and then telling everyone.
Yeah.
And committing, because once you commit, there's no going back. Once you tell your boss, hey, this is what's happening. This is when my last day is going to be. Once you tell that person, you're like, the next day you can't be like, you know what? I changed my mind.
Yeah.
So just thinking about that and that anticipation was definitely scary. I think that when the time came, being that I've been doing this for a while and I worked in the industry for agencies for about 10 years or so, I was ready. So the thought of me doing it wasn't scary. It was just making the leap and leaving my comfort zone. That's the scariest part, because once you leave that, you're on your own. Like everything is up to you.
Yeah. I'm wondering what helped push you to make the decision, because I have a feeling a lot of people that are going to be listening to this episode are people who were in your shoes, where like maybe they've, acquired or like done the LLC, but they're not quite ready. So I'm just curious of like, when did you know it was time? Like, was there anything specific going on in your life personally? Were there conversations maybe you were having with family or friends where you're like, now's the time and I know it's the time?
Yes, definitely had a lot of those conversations. I was also going through a big life transition. I had recently had a son.
That's awesome.
Yes, so I think having him really altered, I don't know, it did something. Like I did this amazing thing. You get to, this is from my own personal experience,
Yeah.
but I just did this big thing, and it changes you as a person, becoming a parent, becoming a mom. So I think it just opened my eyes to how like precious life is. And not only that, I just felt you have this huge responsibility and so much comes with that. Like you have to create boundaries. You have to, take care of this little potato human. And there's so many things that are up to you. You just gain so much. For me personally, I just gained so much strength and felt really empowered. So I don't know, something just clicked. And then when I went back to work, I was super excited. I loved all my coworkers. The projects were great, but there was just like this nagging feeling that I wanted to do something more, that I wanted to be in charge and, just have more, say over my day and even have more flexibility. I felt empowered. So I think I was just ready to take the next step. So I feel like I had this like courage, like this dormant courage like in me already. Like I could have done it earlier, but having my son is kind of like what made that like
gave you that big mom energy.
That big mom energy. Yeah, exactly. That's it. That's the whole story. I had the big mom energy.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's super empowering for a lot of people to listen to and be like, well, I'm scared to do it. And then all of a sudden you're like, I was scared to do this other thing, but really excited about it. And you're just like, I brought a life into the world. If I can do that, I can start my own LLC.
Right. It gives you a different perspective on life too. Mm-hmm. So I was like, if it doesn't work out, there's tons of jobs out there that I can go back to.
Yeah.
But I needed to at least try.
At least try. Mm-hmm. Do you have a business mentor or anybody that inspired you or kind of showed you what this path might look like?
Absolutely. I have a few inspiring people in my life and mentors. They've been super kind and willing to give me feedback. I have my husband who is an independent contractor, so we don't do the same thing. He works in like the commercial production world, but he had a lot of insight on parts of, being independent, like invoicing, and he's also very supportive. Like when you're working for yourself, you have to go and find work. Sometimes you have to wait for checks to come in the mail. There's a lot of stressful aspects that you don't have to worry about when you're with a company because someone's worrying about that for you.
Yeah.
So he's been doing this for years. So just that support is great because it's somebody I can lean on and talk to who understands. And then I have multiple friends who I've known for years who made this jump years ago. They've been entrepreneurs for about 5 to 10 years now, and they've been so helpful, giving me feedback. And they're other designers and they're interior designers, so they have their own businesses, but they don't mind giving me feedback. They want to help. They want everyone to succeed. So they've been giving me just, day after day, so much help, like giving me insight on proposals or how to deal with clients. Sometimes the admin part can be very overwhelming, so I'll ask them a question and they're happy to help me and happy to answer. So
that's rad.
I'm very grateful.
I think that's an overlooked part of deciding to make a big business decision or deciding to become self-employed is like, you don't have to do it all alone. Even though the word self-employed, there are people you can tap into for guidance and to bounce stuff off of. When I was scrolling through TikTok to try to find a good one to open with, I found a day in the life of a mamapreneur, and I hadn't heard that term or whatever. And as she's going through her day, like one of the things she showed was that she's like, I had a 30-minute Zoom call with my business coach and mentor, and I was like, wait, that's a thing? And then she was like, it's like been unbelievably helpful. I didn't even know that, like, duh, of course. So I went to a college where like you had mentors, like professors who were guiding you, and I was like, oh, yeah, I guess you could do that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I thought you could have a mentor like when you're younger.
Yeah.
Because when you're in college and you have the excuse of being a college or a student,
I'm just a student.
Everyone just wants to help you and they don't feel intimidated by you, I guess. So it's been really great to have this community, and a lot of them are local and in the same field, and
they just want to see you like do well.
Exactly.
And share their experience with you. There's no like ulterior motive.
No, it's just genuine, and it's super cool because sometimes you're afraid when you go out there, people are going to see you as a competitor or a threat. So, but that's not always the case if you can find the right community.
What advice would you give to someone who is maybe where you were 10 months ago? So if you started your business 9 months ago, 10 months ago, you were like, I'm really thinking about this. I'm ready to do this. Do you have any words of advice for someone who is afraid and experiencing that fear?
Absolutely. I think what was a defining factor for me, like something I thought about a lot, is are you more afraid to make the leap, or are you going to be more afraid to not make it? Like, if that makes sense. Like, I think the fear of not doing it, that was scarier because do you want to 10 years from now think back to this part of your life when you could have made the decision to like follow your dreams? That sounds cheesy, but I think that's the scarier part. I never wanted to think back and be like, oh, I never tried, So I think if it's on your mind, and it's on your mind a lot, and it's something you really want to do, try it. Because like I said before, there's a ton of jobs out there. There's a ton of opportunities. it's all going to be scary. If you go to a new job, it's scary. So I don't know, just take a chance.
Yeah, which one are you going to regret more?
Which one are you going to regret more? Exactly. Gotcha. So I feel like a lot of bosses are going to hate me right now.
A lot of our audience is small business and self-employed folks.
Good.
Yeah, so I think that they're going to really resonate with this and be like, yeah, I was scared shitless.
I hope so. I feel like I'm romanticizing it sounds very dreamy and cheesy, but
we'll get into the stuff that's not as rose-colored in this next section, which is the top mistakes to avoid when working with your first clients. So I have 2 memes I want to share with you that might describe of what like some people think when it comes to being self-employed. Yeah, I actually like the design of the lemonade sign, especially that aid is on like the second line. It's a separate word. And then I've got one more meme for you to like get this section started. Entrepreneur starter pack. So another meme that I just love seeing are like these starter pack memes. I'm curious about like if you had a perception of what it would be like working with your own clients versus what it actually ended up becoming. Because you had worked in an agency where you were dealing with clients all the time, but was it any different when you got started?
Surprisingly, it hasn't been that much different.
That's good.
Yeah, and right? I think that's because I did wait to make this leap. You know, I spent 10 years at agencies working very closely to project managers. I got to have my hand in a lot of the proposals, so that gave me a lot of experience, and I've taken a lot of that and applied it to what I do now.
Yeah.
I've changed some things and geared it towards how I work and how I would like to work with my clients, but a lot of that set me up for success, I think, starting out.
I think that's really reassuring and like encouraging for people who are probably listening to this, thinking about going out on their own, is like, it's not all that different from when you were probably working with clients at your other company.
It really depends where you work. If you work for a very big company, you might just be in your lane the whole time.
Yep.
But if you work for a smaller agency, or you can even, shadow someone for a little bit, I think that is very helpful.
Yeah, you get to see that full process from like the pitch, the proposal, signing, the contract agreement, invoicing them like that guy talked about, all this stuff you kind of like maybe people don't like but are super critical to like the business process in that transaction.
Absolutely.
How did you get your first few clients in the first few months? Was it referrals? I'm just curious of like, that first like 2-3 month period where you're like, hi, I'm starting my own thing.
So a few of the clients were referrals. Some I had gone out and got on my own. Before I left, I had a few freelance opportunities that came my way, which if you're looking to go out on your own, that's always, a really good way to start. It's a lot of work because you're working full time, but if you can start the process and have a few clients under your belt, so when you do transition or leave, you have some stability there, you have some work. So the first couple clients, I had reached out to one client, and it's more like a partnership. I signed a contract to work with them. During my maternity leave, I had seen a Instagram post of this company looking for a freelancer. So I didn't apply because I was planning to go back to my full-time job. I was excited about that, but it was something that was on my mind. So as I got closer to, making this change, I had just reached out. I'm like, what the heck? I'll just try. I reached out and I said, I'm a really big fan of your company. I thought about applying, but I was going through this in my life at the time, and I would love to chat more. And they got back to me, which was really cool. It was, have you ever heard of Hometown? It's like an HGTV show. It was, they have a store, Laurel Mercantile. So they do like T-shirts and merch.
Yeah.
So they got back to me. So that was one of the people I had set up a contract with.
Dang,
and that was really cool
that's
because
so cool.
It just proves if you just put yourself out there and you take a chance that you never know, you might never get a reply, but you tried. And the other ones were referrals from friends in the industry, or someone had a company called Little Skips Coffee. They're based out of Brooklyn, New York. They had seen PandaDoc and they loved the brand. So I was referred by PandaDoc, and so it all kind of came together at once, and things were just working out. And then I also started collaborating with a few of my friends in the industry who have businesses of their own. I started collaborating with my friend from college who ended up going into interior design. She has an interior design business, and she needed some help with branding for her clients. So we partnered on a lot of that. That was cool because we used to pull all-nighters together. And like we would be racing to our classes to try to like present our projects that we had just stayed up all night for. And it's really cool. Now we're working on these projects together. So
right on.
It's really just, putting yourself out there. And I always try to be respectful of others and have a good attitude, working my way up. So it's really cool to just have people reach out to me and remember me. Some people I hadn't talked to in 10 years, and they just like came out of nowhere, and they're like, hey, I heard you were on your own now.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, that's so cool.
The power of a network is unbelievable. And it sounds like for you, it was a cool mix of things. Mm-hmm. So just shooting your shot with Hometown, tapping into, existing relationships, having people, just the word get out, and people from 10 years coming out of the woodwork, friends you've worked on projects with. It was a little bit of everything. I think that's encouraging as well for people who are like, well, I don't know how to get my first few clients. It's like, tap into a couple different things. Shoot your couple shots, do this, tap in, network, let everybody know what's up. And I think the biggest thing that you might not have said, but I'm going to do for you, let your body of work speak for itself. And that's a huge thing for people who are like, well, I want to go freelancing. And you're like, you're 19 years old and you don't even have a portfolio. Maybe work on a couple projects first so that you can have something to show people, and that'll get your foot in the door a lot quicker.
Definitely. That makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And, building your portfolio and having, you can, some people have a certain style and you can focus on that style. And if that's the type of client you want to always work for, like if you have a very playful style and that's the kind of people you want to attract and the kind of clients, that's great. Or it's also beneficial to have a portfolio that has a little bit of everything: branding, illustration. There's so much out there, and every person is different and has a different focus. So, but putting yourself out there and definitely having a well-rounded portfolio is super helpful.
It's checking a lot of boxes all at the same time. It's not just one tactic that does it all. And that's cool to hear. So speaking of working with clients, have you ever had to either fire a client, maybe reject a project that was, brought your way when you were in the agency and when you're freelancing? Just curious how you handle that, because I think that scares people too, of just like, well, what do I do if this client sucks?
Yeah, that's going to happen.
Yep.
That's life. But it's inevitable. You're not going to always see eye to eye with everyone. Not everyone is meant to work with each other. When someone comes to me and I'm not sure if we're a good fit, sometimes I can recommend someone else that I think will be a better fit for them. Mm-hmm. If they're just awful, maybe. I hate to say that because I'm not in their shoes. I don't know them personally. But, if someone is, if you're getting red flags, it's okay to say no and realize that and move on. Sometimes when you're starting out, I know when I was younger and I would freelance on the side and people would come to me, I would just want to take every project because I'm like, I can't turn this down, and then a few lessons, I had a few lessons that made me realize, okay, this is actually more trouble than it's worth, and it's going to cost me it's going to cost me money, but also my mental health. So the best thing you can do is just, before accepting a project, just think about, is this project for me? Is it worth my time? Am I excited about it? Does this client really appreciate my work? Do they know, my services? Are they looking to,
nickel and dime me?
Right. It's good to think about those things ahead of time.
Yeah.
So that if you do have to reject a client, you can feel confident about the reasons why.
Yeah.
I haven't had to fire any clients yet in this first year, thankfully. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's coming. It'll probably happen tomorrow. I feel like now that we've put it out there in the world, it's going to happen.
Yeah, right.
Which is fine. It's good to have those experiences. But I have had people, you spend so much time writing proposals and sending quotes, and it's time consuming, and you get excited and you're like, oh, I'm going to potentially have this project. It's going to be great for my portfolio. It's going to be great income, right? And then you send it off and then you don't hear from them ever.
Dude,
and
the ghosted proposal.
It's going to happen. And sometimes you don't know. Sometimes those people have other things going on in their life. They have their own company. They're busy. So sometimes it's just because they're busy. And I've sent out proposals and I've heard back from people 3 months, 3 months or 5 months down the road.
Yeah.
And that's tough because you're like, oh man, now I'm really busy and I don't know if I can take on this project. But, sometimes people just get busy and you're like, it is a relief to know like, oh, they just didn't hate me or they didn't like my proposal. But then there are sometimes you don't hear back from anyone. Like a year goes by and you're like, I don't think these people are coming back. And that's okay. You just have to be open to that. You can't get caught up in like the why. Why didn't people get back to me? It's just going to happen, and you just have to be optimistic moving forward, and thinking like, well, I didn't get this project, and they didn't get back to me, but someone else will. And maybe the reason why I didn't get this project is because I have to make room for another project that's going to benefit me and be awesome for me. So
the other thing I'm thinking too is I bet you've probably templatized how you don't sink way too much time into something until you are like, this is going to be a good client. It's like the right time. They have the money. They're ready to rock. I can feel it. I can sense it. They've answered the questions in the way that I want them to. I'll spend a little extra love on this one because it's probably going to go through. Whereas one where you're like, this one, I don't know much. Like this one came out of the blue, or, let me just do a 20 minutes on this proposal and then like not think about it again until like something's signed in writing. Like, let's rock.
Absolutely. That's going to happen a lot. It's smart to have, templates already made. So it's and this is something like one of my mentors mentioned to me, have your emails saved, the ones where you're explaining your process. And
that's a good tip.
Yes. And we did that at the agency too. We had, a project management. I shouldn't give away too many secrets. I don't know if I should.
If it makes you feel better, I got a proposal from Hype when I was working at my last company. So I saw your process.
Okay.
I might have even been talking to you. It's possible, or somebody else from your team, but yeah.
I feel like I would remember. So, but
yeah.
So it's good to like have like a project management, whether it's Asana, there's a ton out there to house all this information. So whether it's a reply to someone who's reaching out and they're interested in what you do, or if it's someone who is interested about a small project, it's good to save the templates that you've already made and the information that you've already made.
Yeah.
And so that way you're not having to redo it every time, because I was doing that for a while. And I don't know why. I think I was just excited because it was a new client and I thought everything had to be custom. But really, a lot of people are looking for similar things. And if they're looking for something different, you can just tweak it a bit. But if you have all of that ready to go, it does save you a lot of time.
I happen to know of a really good tool that sponsors this podcast that would be perfect for this
PandaDoc.
exact scenario. Oh my gosh, what are the odds?
Yes, exactly. So
my last question for you on this section is, where did you have to improve on your skills the most when you made the jump from working a 9-to-5 for another company to being your own self-employed person? I'm curious where you're like, man, I was not good at this. I really had a learning curve, some moments.
I'm definitely having a learning curve, and like I feel like in all aspects, even design. I've had to improve my process, but it's a weird feeling because even though I worked closely with project managers and I had more of that admin experience, there's a lot that I don't know and that I definitely have had to improve on and work on. And just the thought of creating timelines. I had someone to help and to collaborate with when it came to like timelines and, just kick off questions and things like that. And now I'm all by myself. So just making sure I cover all the bases and stay really organized and think about billing and like that video, you're thinking about everything. I'm not just a designer anymore.
Yeah.
I'm everything. So
I'm a tax consultant.
Yeah, I'm adding a lot to my resume. But I guess what the weird feeling is that I'm an expert at design, I feel like I know design, and even though I feel like every day you can improve and I can get better, like I know design, that's fine. That's the easy part. And so I feel expert at that, but I feel really green and new at this like other part. And I don't feel like brand new because I've had this experience and I have a lot of experience to look back on and include when I'm writing proposals and everything like that. But it's still scary. Like I feel like design, like I can talk about that all day. But there's, and there are probably people there are people who are more experienced than me. But when it comes to like the more admin stuff, there's a ton of people that like know way more than me and that have been doing this for years. So it's
and they like doing it.
And they
That's
like
the
doing
part.
it, and it's intimidating because I'm like, I'm not at that level yet, but I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I have the confidence. I actually kind of enjoy it.
That's cool.
I know that guy said like you do things you hate, but I think that's what helped me decide that I wanted to be on my own, because when I was freelancing on the side, I was doing proposals and I was like, this is fun. I get to make the rules. I get to decide. Like,
I'm like imagining you like that scene in Borat where he's sitting and she's like, I'm king at the castle. And you're like, this is mine. Look at my proposal.
That's how I feel. And it's daunting and it's scary, but it's also cool to just like make the rules for yourself.
Yeah. You do this, you do that. Oh, wait, I'm doing it for myself.
Yeah. I hope she's okay with it. I hope she's going to be all right when she has to make these two concepts and do all this,
You're like, oh, wait, that's me.
Yeah. So I've learned so much. Every day I learn something new when it comes to talking with clients and building proposals, the terms and conditions. I'm like, oh, I left that out. I can't believe I left that out, like something
the T's
important.
And the C's, as they call it in the biz.
Yes.
Terms and
So
conditions.
every day is something new, and I'm learning a lot.
Right on. Yeah. I dig that. Well, let's go to our rapid fire section 3 of the podcast, tips for handling the unexpected. So going back to that very first video we watched together, I'm curious, you're someone who's self-employed. How do you handle the following? Sick days, vacations, and overworking / work-life balance. One of the things that he gets into later in that clip that we didn't show just because he goes on and on for like 2 minutes, but you end up working way more than you did in your 9 to 5. And I would just love if you were like, here's how I handle it when I'm sick. You're a mom as well. So like moms don't get sick days according to like Dayquil commercials. How you try to handle vacations with your husband and your family. And then, the overworking part. How do you avoid overworking if you can, if that's even possible?
Oh, definitely. So sick days, it's kind of for myself. When I'm sick, sometimes it's better for me to rest and I can do more the next day.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm like, I have no choice. I have to work. So I'll just work, do the best I can.
Gotcha.
So, and then as far as vacations, I call them working vacations now. So.
Oh, that sucks.
But no, really, it's not too bad because the big vacations will come. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're in Florida, so I can go and sit out in my backyard for 2 hours, and that feels like a vacation sometimes.
That's true.
So I got to have that outlook,
That's a very
positive
good point.
outlook. So
the people that are like listening to this in like Warsaw, Poland, are like, "Gee, thanks."
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I'm just teasing you.
Come to Florida.
And then overworking, work-life balance. Like, I'm curious too. Like, do you have like a limit of like I've seen how many clients I can handle at once, kind of thing? Just curious.
Yes, you definitely have to pay attention to your timelines and how many your deadlines, because they can really build up, and before you know it, everyone has the same deadline and you're like, what did I do? How did I do this to myself? So you have to really pay attention. But I will say that I don't feel overworked. I feel like the opposite.
Interesting.
I'm thinking about it all the time, but knowing that I have more control over my day-to-day and those deadlines is a lot helpful versus I don't have control over it, and I have 3 branding projects and all this stuff due in 2 weeks, and how am I going to do it all? So I feel like maybe I haven't gotten to that point yet, but where I'm working 24 hours a day, but I feel like it's a little bit more spaced out.
I'll have to do a check-in with you a year from now and be like, so same question.
Please do. I'm curious as to how it's going to go. So
last, I guess, is there anything that you want to share with people who are like, yeah, I wasn't expecting this in my first 9 months? Maybe it's alluding to what you were saying. I'm enjoying it more than I expected I would. Or is there anything else of just like in your first year that you think would be valuable to our listeners you want to share as like a final thought?
A final thought. So there are going to be lots of hurdles. But going into it, I'm sure most people know that it's going to be hard, and there's just going to be a lot of hurdles. So you just have to persevere through your first year, second year. I think after 2 years, I think that's like the mark. If you've hit 2 years and you're still going, then you've made it. You're doing good. Maybe that's sooner for other people, but just persevere. There's going to be hurdles. There's going to be some months where you're really busy and you're like, I got this. And there's going to be some months where you have imposter syndrome and you're like, oh man, what did I do? Am I going to get enough projects? So just keep putting yourself out there, and in that downtime, work on yourself, work on improving your process. Reach out to people in the meantime, because even if they don't get back to you right away, maybe they'll get back to you in a few months. So just keep going, because I've had some great moments, and I've had moments where I'm like, but you just have to remember why you're doing it, and yeah, just keep going.
Yeah.
Be positive if you can, because it's stressful, but like good stress too. So
the How I Built This podcast that's very popular, I quoted it on my last episode, but in case someone missed that one, I'm going to quote it again, which is like, we overestimate how much we can do in 1 year, and we underestimate how much we can do in 10 years. Mm-hmm. And so keeping that in mind of just like, hey, just get through your first year, and like don't put like crazy expectations on yourself for that first year, and try to think about it more of like, what can I actually do in 10 years? Because I could probably do a shit ton of stuff.
So true. I've been thinking about that a lot. I think a lot of us put pressure on ourselves to like be successful right away. Whatever your version of success is, you're like, I have to do this right away. I have to be young when I'm successful, And, I think it really is about the journey. Like when I'm older one day, I want to look back and be like, wow, like I didn't just like peak at one moment. Like it took me this many steps, and I'm okay with that. If it takes a while, I'm cool with that.
Right on.
I don't know if you saw, this is random, but the Jennifer Coolidge speech that she gave?
I didn't see it, but I'm familiar with it.
But she was like, when I was a young person, I had all these expectations, and I think she's in her 60s now. But she was like, and now she's, getting all these rewards, and she's like, now my neighbors are inviting me over, now, and I was like, that's really cool, because I suppose it's great for you to be successful at any time in your life. Whenever it happens, but also it makes everything worth it, maybe, to like, for her, it's like all of that struggle was worth it. So if that makes,
I love it.
So that, I don't know, I saw that recently, and I was like, okay, if this, I want this year to go well, but if it takes me 10 years, 15 years, I'm okay with that. As long as I'm doing what I love.
I dig that.
Yeah.
And I want to end it with a Legally Blonde quote. I think at the very end she goes, "We did it!"
Yeah. We did it, yeah.
Maureen, thanks for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate you. You can find Maureen on LinkedIn at Maureen Horan. You can also find her on her website, which is
MaureenTheBean.com.
MaureenTheBean.com.
It'll be changing soon, but
maybe you'll redirect to the next one. You can also find her on Instagram if you want to see some of her work. She's got an awesome portfolio. And I'm definitely going to have you come back on the podcast to check in on how your business is doing. But I want to do a very deep dive into branding and talking about how you approach graphic design. It's got to happen. So we'll have you back on.
That. Sure.
Thanks, Maureen.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody, if you enjoyed this episode, give Maureen and myself a follow and a like on LinkedIn and on Instagram. And that, my friends, is all we have for this episode. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Customer Engagement Lab, brought to you by PandaDoc. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or connect with us on LinkedIn. We love to hear from you and what you think of the show.